Since you hit play on Wife Teacher Mommy, the podcast today, I want to make sure that you know that our free self-love challenge is happening in February 2024 right here on the podcast. The goal of this challenge is to make creating an intentional practice of self-love even easier than ever simply by plugging in your earbuds and listening for about 10 minutes per day. But for the full experience, you're going to want to get the scorecard so you can enter the giveaways, get the daily journal prompts sent to your inbox, and join us for the live wrap-up podcast recording. Yes, you get to join me in the studio and record the podcast together live. It is all free. Go to wifeteachermommy.com/self-love challenge to sign up. Again, it is completely free. You'll get a daily reminder with the free 10-minute coaching each day and your journal prompt, and you will see a transformation over these 14 days. It is not only going to impact your relationship with yourself, but as I'll teach during the challenge, it is going to impact every single other relationship you have in your life, your relationship with other people, your relationship with teaching. That energy is going to impact every single other aspect of your life. So sign up at wifeteachermommy.com/self-love challenge. It's free. Now let's get to the episode. You are listening to episode number 96, part 1 of Wife Teacher Mommy, the podcast. My coaching certification, was it worth my $21,000 investment, and what I learned. In this first of 2 episodes, I'm going to share a little bit behind the scenes, kind of pull back the curtain, and what went down in my coaching certification, what I learned, and how it applies to you. And then in part 2, I'm going to share even more about how I am bringing all of these tools to all of you here on the podcast and beyond. Let's go. Welcome to Wife Teacher Mommy, the podcast. I'm Kelsey Sorensen, a former elementary teacher and current homeschool mom. And even though I've been a resource creator since 2014, I've realized that printables alone aren't all you need in order to thrive as a teacher or homeschool parent. That's why I also created this show and got certified as a life coach to help you finally kick burnout to the curb and feel confident with whatever challenges come your way. With the right mindset strategies and new teaching inspiration, you're going to be well on your way to your best teacher life. Now let's go. Okay, welcome to the podcast today, my friend. I'm so excited to be here. Like always, I love recording these episodes for you and all the other incredible teachers and homeschool parents out there who are listening. And I appreciate you being here. I love doing this podcast. It is one of my favorite things that I do. Now, today I'm talking all about my coaching certification that I did. So you kind of know a little bit about this certification I got, why I chose this one, why I think it's the best one to help me serve you here on the podcast and in Wife Teacher Mommy Club and at our events, such as our upcoming 3-day teacher transformation and the Educate and Rejuvenate that we just finished up. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into this and talk about it. Now, I got introduced to life coaching, a coach who certified through the Life Coach School at the very, very beginning of 2020. It was January 2020, pre-pandemic. I got connected with Lizzie Langston, who was my first life coach. And I've actually had her on the podcast, and I've shared the longer version of this story before in the episode, Why My Panic Attack Was the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me. If you want to hear the full story about how I came into starting to become coached and learning about coaching, I share the whole thing there. But basically, I found her when I was really down and in one of my worst times, and anxiety kind of hit a wall there. And it was when I found coaching, and it was just what I needed. And I learned so much. I worked with her one-on-one for a year and a half. But in the meantime, I also joined some group programs as well. And I learned so much from both working one-on-one with the coach and being in some incredible group coaching programs. And I loved it so much. I dove into this work personally, but at first I never thought I'd actually become a coach. I thought I was too busy with running my business as it was, which was with like, the printable resources, which are great and wonderful. And we still do that. But it was still kind of this like nudge I had. It was like, I'd been doing the printables for like 8 or 9 years. And actually, my team had really started helping at that point, and I was doing some more of like the marketing and connecting with people. And I just felt this pull to want to help teachers and do something more. But it was also a little bit like, I don't have time to do anything else. I really don't. And then, when I learned how much the life coach school certification was, I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't have time. I don't have money. Like those were just things I told myself. And then eventually it was like, okay, when I finally did realize, I'm like, okay, this is really something I want to do. I just kept putting it off. I was like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, it's not the right time. I have too much going on, or, I don't have the money to do this. It's not a cheap certification. But I knew I wanted to do the life coach school and not any other certification because I fell in love with the model. That is the coaching I was introduced to when I worked with Lizzie. And then when I joined other programs such as Self Coaching Scholars and Be Bold, that helped me learn so much about this model. So eventually, when I knew, we launched our membership, Wife Teacher Mommy Club, in 2021. And it started out just access to our resources is what it was. So you didn't have to buy individual resources. And the other thing we promised, though, was that we were going to do an event that summer. And at the time, I was calling it Wife Teacher Mommy Live because we did not have a name for it yet. And I had no clue what it was going to entail. And we were just like, it was less than a year from when the event was happening. This was like September 2021. We're like, we're doing an event. How do we do an event? We had no clue. So that was our first Educate and Rejuvenate in 2022. But when I sent a survey to our members and I was like, we're going to do an event, it's going to be just for our members, just as a benefit that they get for the membership. But then as I started reading all the survey responses and just seeing what people said and what they needed, I knew that I wanted to be able to offer more holistic support. Like the resources were there to save you time. But then when you save time, we just kind of move on to the next problem, right? You're like, okay, great, my sub plans are done. Or okay, great, I've got these home learning packets or whatever, but now my kids aren't wanting to do them or whatever. So, it's just the next thing. And then we get in these mindset hurdles or we get imposter syndrome or whatever else. And, when we asked, like, what is your biggest problem in teaching? There were so many different things that came up. And I knew that so many of them, because I had now been in coaching for over 2 years, I knew that so many of them could be supported with coaching. And I just knew that. So I knew that I wanted coaching to be part of this event, but I was like, you know what? I want it to be part of our membership. At that time, I was telling myself I did not have time to become a coach. I was not becoming a coach, but I wanted people to have a coach. So that was when I stalked the amazing Chrissy Nichols, who I'm still in collaboration with. We tell that story of me stalking her on the first, I think it's episode 3 of Wife Teacher Mommy, the podcast. My audio on that one, I first somehow didn't get the setting right. So whenever I listen to that one, I'm like, darn it. But you know what? It was episode 3. There's lots of growth now. But it's a great episode. And we kind of share how we came together. I would definitely recommend listening to that one. Anyways, so basically booked a consult with her to talk to her, like, hey, will you come coach in my membership? And she was like, yes. So she started coaching in the club and I was still like, okay, great. We have coaching. I don't need to become a coach or whatever. But then just a few months later, I'm like, no, you know what? I really do want to become a coach. And the funny thing is, Chrissy said, oh, from the moment you talked to me, I knew you were going to become a coach. Like, she's like, there was no question about that. So I quickly signed up for coach certification and did it. So I started it in 2022 and I finished at the very, very beginning of 2023. And it was such an incredible journey for me. And the amazing part is that I got to dive deeper into a lot of the tools that I had already been studying through working with a one-on-one coach and through being in these different group coaching programs I'd been in. But I just kind of got to have a deeper understanding. And honestly, the fact that I did put down such a large investment, and again, I didn't do it all at once. It was like they allowed payments and stuff. I mean, it's like if you go to college, it sounds like, whoa, like $21,000. How could you possibly spend that? But when you think about a college degree, I just felt like I was going back to school. Like, you pay more than that for a 4-year college degree. And I knew this was really the next step in my career. So once I did the mindset work around that, I'm like, okay, yeah, we're doing this. But putting that investment down and knowing that I was going to be spending 5 figures for this certification, it was like, okay, I am in this. I am applying this the best I possibly can. So that investment, really does, like when you put money on the line, it does help you to be able to dive into the work even more. And obviously it's a more advanced certification than just like, doing the group programs and everything, because you have to learn it to not only understand it for yourself, but to be able to teach it to other people and be certified in these tools. So have a very deep understanding of it and being able to utilize them with other people. So I got a really deep understanding of the self-coaching model, and I'll talk about that even more in part 2 of this episode, but that is the CTFAR model, circumstance. And then it's our thoughts about the circumstance that cause our feelings, that drive our actions and create our results. That is the model, which is kind of like the cornerstone of all of our coaching. But we learned how to use it to work with clients, getting really nitty gritty detailed in each part, like hours of studying just for each component of the model, like circumstances, thoughts, like spending like multiple modules on like the differences between circumstances and thoughts and all the nuances there, and where it shows up, like why do we sometimes think a thought is a circumstance, and all of that, really diving in. And feelings, actions, results, really diving in nitty gritty on each and every one of those. There were also other amazing great modules, like there were diversity, equity, and inclusion modules, which are so important, so we know how to do this work equitably and how everyone comes into this with their own lens, how clients all come in with their own lens, reminding us to continue staying tapped in to all of that, because just watching a module one time is not what we want to do as coaches. We want to be aware and help everybody, no matter what their background is. Another important piece of it was an overview of trauma and understanding adverse childhood experiences. And over 64% of us have had adverse childhood experiences. We understood like how trauma shows up: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, because as a coach, it's important to be able to notice when a client is going into one of these. And I do have 2 other courses I plan on taking to make sure I'm even more trauma informed as I work with everybody, because as we've learned, you can't handpick people who don't have trauma. And we, like so many of us have that in our lives, and it might show up in our teaching or when we're working with our kids or whatever. So that's very important for me as a coach to be aware of, so I can help you in the best way that I can. We talked about, in the certification, we learned about processing feelings and the different things we do with our feelings, such as react, resist, avoid, and allow. We talked about buffering, which is when we're trying to avoid, that's a big part of the avoid part of when we're trying to avoid negative feelings, like when we pick up our phones and scroll them and stuff, when we're avoiding negative emotion, and kind of there's a whole phenomenon behind that. And again, a lot of this I will be teaching you here on the podcast, and even more in depth inside Wife Teacher Mommy Club, which is amazing because you don't have to pay for certification. You do not have to certify to learn the majority of these tools. The big part of the certification was learning how to apply it and teach it to clients in group settings and one-on-one settings, all of that. So many tools, which I'll teach about, including manuals, which are like when we have kind of an agenda for other people without necessarily telling them. We'll have a whole podcast about that soon, I'm sure. Buffering, like I mentioned, weight loss mindset and strategies, past and future focus, goal setting, impossible goals, and just learning how to help other people with these tools. Some of the big things that will apply to me, but don't necessarily apply to those of you who are like, I just want to learn and apply this work myself, but I don't want to be a coach, is how to hold space during a session, how to have like that totally clear slate, and how to coach yourself beforehand so you show up for the client in that way, types of questions to ask, and specific tools that we use as coaches to show a client their mind. And this is only, again, when we have consent to coach somebody. We don't do it just in everyday life and everything. So there's all that. All of this was new to me, and not in any of those other coaching programs I'd done, but good for me to learn as someone who wants to not only do this for myself, but to help others in the best way possible. And I've been doing that with a lot of you here. So I'm really, really thrilled about that. Now, what I learned about myself through this experience, for one, I learned that I was capable of so much more than I thought I was capable of. Like, remember, I questioned, like, I don't have time to do a certification. Like, that was something I was telling myself that was a limiting belief. And then I realized, like, no, this is what I really want to do. And I found that time for that. Like, there were things I was able to simplify during my work hours so I could fit some in, but also it was like, well, what about when the kids are in bed and my husband's playing his video games? Like, I'm passionate about this work. Like, yeah, I can do some more. I have the capacity for that because this lights me up. This does not drain me. And so I learned that about myself, which was incredible. I learned ways that my brain was getting in the way that I hadn't realized yet. Like I already mentioned, my 2 biggest things that were like my hurdles over certifying as a coach, where I don't have time and I don't have enough money. These weren't only not true because like I was able to figure out, making payments and stuff for the certification, and I don't have time. Like I just said, I figured out a way to make time. We never don't have time for something. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. It's like what we want to fit in there and what can we delegate? What can we eliminate? What are we doing that we don't want to do? How can we fit something in there if it's a priority to us? So, the I don't have time is a thought. We would put that in the thought line, not the circumstance line. And that was a thought that I was telling myself as if it was true, but I realized that it was not. And it was preventing me from becoming my best self because through certification, I honestly feel like I went through such a transformation. And I had some really hard things going on as I started working on my certification. Shortly before I started my certification, my sweet grandma had a stroke. And that was a really, really hard time for me. And there were a lot of emotions involved with that and a lot of things. And she ended up passing away a month after I finished my certification. And it was hard. And through that, I allowed myself to not beat myself up when I had been doing the best I had, like because the coaching certification with my mindset, I've been doing the best I possibly had with. So this is a tangent. I promise it's related. I've been doing the best I possibly had on losing weight. I had been consistent for months, and then my grandma passed. And I hadn't eaten bread for like 4 months. I had been dropping pounds like crazy. And then you know what? We went out to lunch after and I had bread there. And for a few weeks, I just did not care about any of that anymore. And you know what? I held space for myself with that. I did not beat myself up because you can use this work to work on your mindset around that, because I would notice thoughts when they would creep up like, I'm not doing this. It's like, well, you know what? It's because I am grieving. And I feel like I was able to handle it a lot better because I had really dove into this work and gotten to know myself more. And I was able to know what I needed to get through such a hard time that, again, I'm still getting through. So that is, a rough one, but it's just really helped to be able to process some emotions. And then, because there's emotion processing, that's part of what we teach in coaching. And then there's also, the mindset work. And a lot of mindset things would come up like, why am I not doing this? Why am I not doing that? And I was just able to, quickly notice those, push them aside because I would question them right away. I would be like, wait, no, like I would catch myself a lot sooner than I would before I did the coaching certification. And so the great thing is like I'm able to stay really consistent with my goals, but then I'm also able to have so much grace with myself more than ever before. So it's really this incredible phenomenon of just having so much more love for yourself wherever you are when you do this work, because you're able to take that chance to look at yourself like as an outside observer and see what's going on. You can just have some compassion there too. Like you understand like ways where you are causing things, and but also ways that you're like, but that's the way it should be. Like, and I'm okay with that. So, anyways, that was a big part of it for me about what I learned about myself, like just getting to know myself better, how I process things. The one thing I want to mention is a lot of times, and I've had clients say this so many times that they think like I have to put pressure on myself in order to meet a goal. Like I can't do it if I don't put that pressure on myself. And what I learned is that's not necessarily true. There are other ways, and these are ways that I've taught at Educate and Rejuvenate and in Wife Teacher Mommy Club. Like beating yourself up is like a short-term ticket to like hitting a goal, but it's really about loving yourself all the way down. And actually, if you listen to whether it's about weight loss or anything else, my episode with Corinne Crabtree, she's another one of the top coaches at the Life Coach School. We think that's helpful, but it's usually not. So it's like, how can I love myself so much that I want this for myself? And how that helps everybody else around you too. Another thing that this certification helped me with is getting even more clear on my time management and goal setting process. So I was able to manage my time better. I'm able to set goals and do better with them, but also give myself grace when things don't go perfectly, because things never go completely perfectly, right? And it's all because all of this, everything I've just mentioned, is because I learned how to manage my mind so much better by diving in and really learning these tools. So the big question, was it worth that $21,000 investment? Absolutely yes. Because for me, I feel like I, through these tools, have had a transformation in my life, but also not just me. It is not about me because, I was already able to dive into this work, and I could have just set aside that same amount of time to dive into the model and to processing feelings and everything in the group programs that I'm in, right? But the certification was to allow me to learn how to use these tools to help others. And the incredible thing is, we are so early in this. I feel like we're just getting started here with the Coaching and Wife Teacher Mommy Club. We're just like a year and a half into having coaching in the club, something like that, between me and Chrissy. But we already have stories from members that have just brought me to tears on how much coaching has helped them and inspired their life and transformed them for the better. And I'm not going to tell any of their stories because those are their stories, but a lot of our members got to hear each other's stories and feel that. And it's this community of all of us who are engaged in this work and wanting to understand our mindset, wanting to process our feelings, wanting to not beat ourselves up about a lesson not going right or whatever. We want to be there for each other. We want to be there for ourselves. We want to do that so we can be there more for our students and our families as well. And it starts with ourselves and our mindset. I truly believe that is how we show up best in the world for everybody else in our lives too. Now, this is going to lead me into part 2 of this episode, where I'm going to talk about how I want you and every teacher or homeschool parent out there to get from this work, and how I don't think you need to do what I did. I don't think you need to invest all of that money into getting a certification in coaching if you want to use this to better the lives of yourself and your family and your kids or your students, those around you. I do not believe you need to do a full certification for that. And I'm going to share how I believe you can learn these tools and utilize them to help all those around you. So I will talk to you on part 2. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you're ready to take the next step and work with me and take everything you learn on this podcast to the 10x level, I'd love for you to join me inside Wife Teacher Mommy Club. You'll get access to a library of 1,000+ resources that will help you take back your time. The resources alone easily pay off your club membership. Plus, if you join us on the quarterly plan or above, you'll get our luxury leather-bound teacher planner, a $50 value shipped to your door for free. But in my humble opinion, the most important part of the club is the opportunity to get coached on whatever comes your way, that you can thrive in teaching and life. You'll get to join weekly coaching calls with me and fellow club coaches to not only listen and consume this content, but really apply it to your life. This is where the magic happens. The doors are closed the majority of the year, but you can request a personalized invitation as a podcast listener. Simply go to wifeteachermommy.com/podcast invite to learn more. You can also find the link in the show notes. I hope to see you face to face on Zoom soon inside Wife Teacher Mommy Club.